The morning sun stretched across the crowded streets of Manila, warming the cracked pavement where Rico stood with his old guitar. His shoes, once white, were now torn and gray, the soles held together with tape. Each day he sang on the same corner, hoping that his voice would buy him a little rice for dinner and medicine for his sick mother. He was only 15, but his eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too much too soon. As the traffic roared and jeepneys passed, his voice cut through the noise, soft, soulful, and filled with pain that even the strangers could feel. He sang a love ballad his mother used to hum while washing clothes. People slowed down, some tossing a few coins into his small metal cup, others recording short clips on their phones before disappearing into the crowd. Rico didn't care about fame. All he wanted was to earn enough for his mother's medicine and his sister's schoolbooks. When his fingers ached, he stopped to look at the sky, whispering a small prayer that maybe one day his songs would reach beyond this street. The clouds moved slowly, and for a brief second, he imagined himself on a real stage, with lights and applause instead of car horns and chatter. One rainy afternoon, while most street performers packed up, Rico stayed. The drizzle turned into a downpour, but he kept singing under a broken umbrella. His voice echoed down the wet street, carrying the kind of emotion that only hunger, love, and hope could create. A foreign tourist stopped nearby, shielding himself with a camera. He watched quietly as Rico finished his song, clapping with genuine amazement. "You have a gift, kid," the man said, slipping a few pesos into Rico's cup and recording a short video. Rico smiled shyly, embarrassed by the attention. To him, it was just another day, another song to survive. He didn't know that the man's recording would soon reach millions of hearts across the world. That night, Rico walked home through puddles, his shoes squishing with every step. The small shack he shared with his family smelled faintly of medicine and rice porridge. His mother lay on a thin mattress, coughing softly. "How was today, Anik?" she asked. Rico knelt beside her and smiled. "We'll have dinner tonight, Mama. I sang all day." She touched his cheek, her eyes tired but full of pride. "Keep singing, Rico. Your voice will take you somewhere." He looked down at his broken shoes and laughed lightly. "I don't think these shoes can go far." She smiled. "Then sing until the world comes to you." Days passed, and Rico returned to his corner, singing the same heartfelt songs. What he didn't know was that the video the tourist uploaded was spreading fast online. People around the world were sharing it, calling him the boy with the golden voice. Comments poured in, some offered to help, others wanted to know who he was. Within a week, millions had watched his rainy day performance. Yet Rico remained unaware, singing in his same corner, unaware that his dream had already begun to unfold. A few days later, while he was tuning his guitar near a cafe, a young barista ran outside holding a tablet. "Hey, you're the boy in this video," she said excitedly. Rico frowned in confusion until she showed him the screen. There he was, drenched in rain, eyes closed, singing from his soul. The view count shocked him, millions of plays, thousands of comments, and headlines calling him the street angel of Manila. Rico's hands trembled. He couldn't believe people from around the world were listening to his voice. Tears welled up as the cafe owner clapped him on the shoulder. "You're famous, kid. The world finally heard you." That evening, Rico rushed home with excitement. His mother listened as he explained between breaths. She smiled weakly, tears running down her face. "See, I told you your voice would travel," she whispered. He hugged her gently, overwhelmed by joy and disbelief. Outside their small window, the city lights glimmered brighter than ever. For the first time in his life, Rico felt something powerful, a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, dreams born on the streets could still find their way to the stars. Rico sat backstage, his hands trembling as the sound of cheering fans filled the studio. The producers had found him after his video went viral, and now he was standing behind the curtain of one of the biggest talent shows in the Philippines. For a boy who once sang beside noisy jeepneys and flickering streetlights, the bright lights of a real stage felt almost unreal. He looked down at his feet. His shoes were still worn, but he had cleaned them as best as he could. When the host called his name, his heart pounded so hard he could barely breathe. As he stepped onto the stage, the crowd's noise faded into a soft hum. The lights were blinding, and the judges sat with their pens ready. Rico took a deep breath and closed his eyes. When the music started, something inside him changed. He forgot the cameras, the audience, and the pressure. His voice rose pure and strong, full of pain and truth. He sang the same love ballad he used to sing for coins, and by the time he hit the final note, the crowd was on their feet. The applause was deafening. The judges stood to clap, one of them wiping away tears. Rico's eyes filled too, not with pride but disbelief. The boy who used to sing on the streets now stood in front of thousands, and for the first time, they were all listening. After the show, reporters crowded around him, asking questions about his past, his family, and his dreams. Record labels called, offering contracts and tours. Rico smiled politely, but deep down he just wanted to go home and tell his mother everything. When he arrived, his mother's eyes were already wet with tears of joy. "You made us proud, Anik," she whispered, holding his hand. "But remember, stay humble." He nodded, promising her that fame would never change him. That night, he stared at his guitar and whispered, "We did it, Mama. We finally did it." He had no idea that the hardest part of his journey was still ahead. Fame came fast, and with it came change. Suddenly, Rico had stylists dressing him in expensive clothes, managers planning every move, and producers telling him what songs to sing. He was moved into a condo with a view of the city skyline, far away from the noise of the streets he once called home. At first, he enjoyed the new life, soft beds, hot meals, and endless attention. But slowly, the pressure began to crush him. His schedule was packed from dawn to night. Every interview felt the same, every performance rehearsed. He wasn't singing for his heart anymore, he was singing for ratings. His mother's health started to decline again, and Rico barely had time to visit. Each time he called, his sister told him, "Mama just wants to see you." But his manager would shake his head and say, "You can't miss this concert, Rico. Think of your fans." Rico began to feel like a prisoner in his own dream. The boy who once sang freely in the rain was now trapped in a world of lights and lies. One night, after a long show, Rico walked out of the studio and hailed a taxi. He told the driver to take him to his old neighborhood. When he arrived, he saw the familiar street corner where he had once stood with his guitar. The air smelled of roasted corn and rain-soaked concrete. Without thinking, he sat down, took out his guitar, and started to sing. His voice carried softly through the night, and soon a small crowd gathered. People recognized him, whispering his name, but he didn't care. For the first time in months, he felt free. When he returned home that night, he sat beside his sleeping mother and promised himself that he would find a way to sing from the heart again. Fame had taken his time, his joy, and almost his soul, but it hadn't taken his love for music. He looked down at his old, broken shoes beside the bed and smiled faintly. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "I'll start over. Not for them, but for us." Rico woke up to the sound of soft morning rain tapping against his window. He sat quietly on his bed, staring at his guitar leaning against the wall. The last few months had been a blur of shows, lights, and noise, but inside, he felt empty. He remembered the promise he made to his mother, to always sing from his heart, and realized he had drifted away from that truth. The world saw him as a star now, but he missed the boy who sang on the streets without caring who listened. That morning, he made a decision that would change everything. He called his manager and said, "I'm writing my own song. No more covers, no more fake smiles." The line went silent for a moment before the manager sighed. "If that's what you want, Rico, then do it your way." For weeks, Rico worked alone in his small studio. He poured every memory, every pain, every ounce of hope into his new song. It was called Golden Heart, a ballad about struggle, love, and never forgetting where you came from. When he recorded it, his voice trembled at first, but as the melody grew, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. The song wasn't perfect, but it was honest. He dedicated it to his mother, to every street singer, and to every child who dreamed despite the odds. When he released it, he expected little. Instead, it exploded. Within hours, Golden Heart topped the charts, spreading across the country like wildfire. The lyrics resonated with people everywhere: factory workers, students, drivers, and dreamers who saw themselves in his words. Rico began to use his fame differently. Instead of endless interviews and sponsorships, he organized small concerts for free, performing in schools and public parks. He brought guitars and microphones for young street performers and encouraged them to sing boldly. Dreams don't need fancy shoes, he told them during one of his visits. They just need a brave heart. Children began singing his songs in classrooms. Even local news outlets called him the voice of hope. His mother, recovering slowly, watched from her hospital bed with pride, her eyes shining every time he appeared on TV. Rico visited her as often as he could, sitting beside her bed and softly singing her favorite lullabies. One evening, after a massive charity concert, Rico stood backstage and looked at the cheering crowd. Thousands of people had come not just to see a celebrity, but to feel his music. He smiled, touching the edge of his old, broken shoes, now kept as a lucky charm. "We made it, Mama," he whispered to himself. But his story wasn't finished yet. An invitation had arrived from America's Got Talent, offering him a chance to perform on an international stage. He hesitated at first, unsure if he was ready, but his mother simply smiled and said, "Go, Anik. The world needs to hear you." When Rico arrived in Los Angeles, the city lights felt both strange and familiar. On the night of his audition, he wore simple clothes and carried his old guitar. Backstage, surrounded by contestants with glittering outfits and nervous faces, he quietly prayed. When it was his turn, he stepped onto the massive stage, the crowd murmuring in curiosity. The host asked about his story, and Rico smiled softly. "I'm just a street boy who kept singing," he said. The judges nodded, and the music began. He performed Golden Heart, his voice trembling at first, but soon soaring with emotion. The audience fell silent, listening to every note. By the end, many were crying. The judges stood, clapping through tears. One of them reached over and hit the golden buzzer. As golden confetti rained down, Rico fell to his knees, overwhelmed by emotion. He looked down at his shoes, still the same worn pair he had carried with him through every step of his journey. "We made it, Mama," he whispered again, tears streaming down his face. The audience cheered, chanting his name, but in his heart, he was still that same boy singing under the rain in Manila. The world had finally heard him, not because of fame or fortune, but because he never gave up on his golden voice and the heart that guided it.